Welcome to the Inspire Me podcast. My name is Leonie Lamb, career coach, corporate trainer, and speaker. And today we have Leonie Stanfield back with us. How are you?
I'm great, thanks, Leonie.
I will introduce you all to Leonie's background a little bit more in a moment. But today we will be talking about how to manage a career transition. So we'll be sharing with you all the ideas how to manage and navigate through your own career transition. We will actually talk through a model, a career transition model that's very helpful and useful. And also, Leonie Stanfield is going to be interviewing me and asking me questions about my personal experience in career transition. So that will be a challenge, but also an opportunity. That's essentially the topic. But really, at the end, we'd always like to provide some practical strategies that's going to help you with your career. So let's get started. And to begin, I will just introduce everyone. If it's the first time here listening to this podcast, welcome, welcome. How I know Leonie. So I met Leonie through a professional association called CDAA for career coaches. And I remember vividly that one year where you were in the professional development event. And that was the first time I met you. And I was so impressed with you when I first met you that I said, you know what, let's work together. So we've known each other for over 10 years, right, Leonie?
Yeah, amazing.
And we also, if you've been following my podcast, since I started, she was our first speaker about April 2020.
Oh my goodness, that's so long ago now, isn't it?
Yes. So that was where we started. And so we worked together, we're friends. And we've worked on many projects, including working in an organization that was going through a restructure and coaching many, many people throughout in a day. So that's how I know Leonie. But on her LinkedIn profile, she's got down as she's a career coach, executive coach, facilitator, trainer, and speaker, with more than 25 years experience in all those areas, leadership coaching, training, and in specializing in communication. Definitely clear communication. So, anything else you would like to add in reference to your background, Leonie?
I think that's well and truly enough. That's great. Thank you.
Yes. So our intention, as you can see, there's two Leonies here, is simply to share information through our career coaching practice, how we have helped people navigate through their career transition, and just to provide information, because sometimes when you go through a career transition, if you don't know the process, it can be quite overwhelming. So our intention is to help people understand that process, what it looks like, what happens. And so you either yourself going through a career transition or someone else is going through a transition, you can actually share this resource and help them navigate through that process. So let's get started, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so I'll be asking Leonie a few questions and then Leonie will ask me a few questions. So the first question is, in your experience, Leonie, in supporting people through career transitions, how do people cope with sudden career changes, such as one losing their job in an organisational restructure?
Yes, this is an area that, as you said, we're both quite experienced in, both personally and also assisting others. And how people cope is very different. So everyone is different, everyone's situation is different. And so we do see real differences. And yet there are also some similarities. As I was thinking about this, I was thinking that people kind of perceive a change, as having threats or opportunities, or both. And I think these kind of come through in three areas. So how people cope relates to each of these areas, I think. So firstly, I think the area of environment, the environment in which this change is happening, is one. I think there's also, secondly, the expectations that they have around this change, and maybe others have around this change, is kind of a second important area. And I think the third area is energy, actually, and we might even add emotions, but definitely energy is kind of another third area. So I think that you can, as people cope, they're seeing threats and they're seeing potential opportunities. So in the first area of environment, some of these are super kind of practical situational things. If you've lost your job, that's a threat to your ongoing income. You know, some people need to get a job quicker than others. And we make assumptions sometimes that the loss of something means that we won't ever gain that income back. But the reality is that with every change, we may actually end up better off in the long term, but we don't know. So it's really a complex kind of thing to navigate. The environment can also be different if you've chosen to make the change or if someone has chosen that for you. And it can also be whether you knew about it or whether it was a complete shock. So sometimes an organisation, we kind of know they're making changes and we've got a bit of a heads up, but other times it's just completely out of the blue. So those kind of things can make a difference in how people cope. I think that's just two environmental aspects. If we're thinking about expectations, a lot of people, including myself, at times, we invest a fair bit of our identity in our work in different ways. And so sometimes our expectations are so closely tied to work that when there's a work change, we kind of worry about, well, what does this now mean for who I am? Or what am I going to be able to do in the future? Will I be able to make the same contribution? You know, it's kind of threats potentially. But again, there's also kind of opportunities. There's other people's expectations. So often it's your family, partners that might be kind of worried for you or excited for you, or it's kind of managing their expectations about the change. And then the third area of energy, I think some people just personally are more energized by change. Maybe it's part of their personality. Maybe it's the amount of change they've gone through. If they've done this multiple times, maybe, you know, they have a different way of coping compared to a first timer. But energy and, you know, maximizing kind of positive energy, but also recognizing that it is going to drain energy. There's lots of things about a change, and we'll talk about the process of transition in a minute, but a change that kind of drain energy. So that's a long answer, but people cope with a sudden kind of workplace change by perceiving threats and or possibilities. And there's a lot of those different factors. And some people are going to have patterns where they bottle things up and kind of suppress things. Other people are going to have patterns where it all comes out. Everyone is different. Everyone is different.
Yes, everyone is different. I mean, for you and I, some people can adapt to the change quickly, days, weeks, but some people can take many years, as you see in our own practices. And I love what you just shared, focus on the environment, the three things you covered, the environment, the expectations, and the energy. And it's really simple, straightforward, which leads to the next question when, as I introduced, that we would be talking through a career transition model. And the one we are looking at is called the Bridges transition model. So if you can just share a little bit about that and as to provide an understanding how this model can help people navigate their transition well.
Yes, thanks. William Bridges, many years ago, developed this model, and it's still very applicable and widely used today, because it's a model of transition, which is how we process or how we interact with the change. So a change is just a change, but how we actually experience it and navigate it and interact with that change is really that process of transition. And that's a bit more complicated. So the three phases that William Bridges identified are very, from my experience working with people and my own personal experience, are very true. Now, it doesn't look the same as everyone experiences this. It can look a bit different, but there are going to be endings. So with any change, and I often say to people, even a change you chose, like maybe shifting house, there are some endings. There are some things that are hard that you're saying goodbye to. And so a phase of transition, the kind of first phase, is the ending phase. And it's recognizing that there are a lot of emotions that go with endings. And in many cases, if it's a sudden ending, then, you can be in shock or denial or angry or frustrated but even if it's not a sudden ending, even if it's an ending that you've chosen, you can still be surprised by the strength of the feelings you might have around, regret or around just seeing the end of a chapter that you loved or a change in relationships. So there's lots of endings. And for some people, these endings are kind of more painful than others. Everyone kind of deals with those endings in different ways. And again, coming back to that kind of environment, expectations and energy kind of impacts those endings. The middle phase, though, is one, it's kind of called the neutral zone, but I'm not sure that that's actually a great description of it because it doesn't feel very neutral because it's the space between an ending and the third phase of a new beginning. And what happens between an ending and a new beginning? Oh, my goodness, there's a whole lot of uncertainty. It's kind of this, it almost feels like a no man's land of kind of where you're still impacted by the endings. There's no real new beginnings in sight yet, and there's a whole lot of uncertainty. And so for some people, that's kind of the biggest energy drain, I think. And it's good to recognize and know that because that's normal. All the research around how our brains work says that they prefer certainty and that actually rather make up a story that is certain, even if it's maybe not necessarily true, than have uncertainty. So we're pretty wired to want to find certainty. And in this neutral kind of phase, I think the challenge is that it can kind of feel like a threat at some days, and other days it can feel like a possibility. But it's in that space, by kind of being willing to live through that space, that's when new possibilities begin to emerge. And so then that next phase is kind of where you're starting to see the creativity come through. I've got an idea. Maybe I could think about that. Or I've spoken to someone, gee, they have an opening, or just something that gives you hope, something that gives you an idea about the future. So that's the kind of three stages: endings, neutral, and new beginnings. The dilemma is for most of us, though, it's not a nice, here's the ending. It kind of does the U shape, here's the ending, fall off the cliff, all the emotions. Here's the hard, demotivating neutral space. Here's the lovely new beginning. Well, it kind of doesn't work exactly like that. It works more like a ping pong ball, actually, I think, like going from one side to the other. So we recognize that even though that's the kind of pattern, and you will go through that pattern, where you are at any point in time can really depend on so many things. And there's not a right or wrong. It's just that's what is.
Mm.
Yeah. So being kind to yourself in the process is pretty important.
Yes. I'll just recap on what you just shared. The three various stages, endings, neutral, and new beginnings. And certainly when I share my experience, I can relate to all of that you just mentioned. Definitely the neutral zone is probably not the right word for it. It can be that real uncertainty there. But more importantly, it's helping people understand that this is natural, it's normal to experience a range of emotions throughout going through a transition in your life. It doesn't have to be career, it could be anything, and that's applicable to anything in your life. As you said, moving homes. Yes. Yes. So the last question I have around is for just in general around how can leaders and managers and work colleagues help people navigate through career transitions?
Yes, this is a very kind of big topic. So I'll just really kind of briefly share a couple of things maybe. I was listening to a podcast recently that talked about building trust, and they talked about kind of the 3 trust pillars of empathy, authenticity, and kind of logic. And the fact that in many times we may be good at and have a strength in one, but we might have what they call a wobble in others. And so I think empathy is important. It's important to recognise that everyone is going to experience this change and have a different transition journey. And we need to kind of put ourselves in their position, and particularly to understand what they might perceive as threats to them or to their livelihood or to their families through this, because it can help us understand and put ourselves in their shoes. So I think organisations, managers, team members, I think that empathy is really important. And particularly if you're a team member who's going through a transition like someone else in your team is, you are going through the same process, the same change, but it's a different process for you. So just remember, have empathy if someone's doing it differently to you. The other thing I would say is authenticity. So again, organisations and managers and team members, if you can be real about this, like this is not, presenting a front that is saying one thing and then doing another, because that doesn't build trust. So there needs to be a degree of authenticity around, even if it's a hard message, it's better to be authentic and honest with that. And the logic side, I think, people, when they're experiencing strong emotions and under threat, logic is kind of not where they want to be. But so it kind of might seem like logic is hard to do, but it doesn't mean that we don't at least provide kind of some sense of the logic and the reasoning. And I think one of the challenges potentially for people facing a change is they may feel it's kind of unfair. And for some people, if they don't, even if they understand the logic of it, they may still feel it's unfair. But I think sometimes people may not be ready to kind of come to grips with the logic, but at some point they will down the track. So I think there's a sense of just being aware of those areas to build trust, and to recognise that everyone is going to be different. Kind of be kind, be curious for people. Don't assume you know how they're going to react. That they may or may not, and also don't take it personally in terms of their reaction, because a lot of times people need the space to process, and there are a lot of strong emotions there. So giving them time and space to process is helpful.
Yes. What you just mentioned on empathy, I think that's gold, Leonie, that people, if they have empathy for others, building that trust is that is the golden moment when someone is going through a career transition or just a problem or crisis in their life. Being able to empathize, it's something that is rare, very rare. I can say out of 10 people, maybe I can Like in my out of 10 friends, maybe I've
Mm.
probably put 2 or 3 people that I feel they have that empathy.
Yeah.
And as you said, it's a career transition is different for everyone. Everyone responds differently. And what I've noticed with clients is that sometimes some of the clients last year, they've been through a few restructures, and this is like the third or fourth time that their role has been made redundant. So each time they go through that transition, it can easily activate the first time they were going through the career transition, and that first time may have been very difficult. And then the previous experience, or the previous experience impact their what they're feeling right now. So it is very, very different for everyone. And as you said, don't make assumptions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is anything else you'd like to add before you take over and be the host?
No, that's great. I think it's really helpful to hear from people who have been through transitions. So I'm really keen to hear your experience, particularly as you can look at it from the person going through it, but then you can also step out and look at it as kind of an observer. So I'm kind of really keen to hear from you.
Okay, before I start, I'm just going to have a sip of water because it's a big personal story. Thank you, dear listeners. So, my personal story.
Yes.
Yep.
So I want to understand, have you kind of personally experienced that career transition?
Yes, Leonie, happened a few times in my career business. I mean, becoming a business owner, it was probably one of the biggest career transitions that took for a long time, 6 to 12 months to actually get used to the mindset of being an employee and being a career, business owner. That was quite significant. But more recently, I personally went through this, and you can probably hear in my voice I'm a little bit nervous.
Yeah.
It's such a personal story, and it happened in recent years. But so just to give everyone a bit of context of the background. So this year is 15 years in my business. So
Wow. Congratulations. That's
yes,
amazing.
thank you, Leonie. And I think you're close to, you're about 10 years this year.
You're
So
getting
we both
closer.
should, yeah, we both should celebrate. So within 15 years of my own career coaching training business, I 7 of the years I was working 1 to 2 days a week with a university, Western Sydney University. And so for the 2 years I was actually working, in recent years, I was working 2 days a week, like every Thursday, Friday. So that was really good because having a mortgage, having that stable income was amazing. And I had a role as a careers consultant, so very much similar to my role in my business as a career coach. But as a careers consultant, I was working at a university where it was working with students and graduates, which I love that role. But in August 2023, I decided to take a risk and resign from the role 2 days a week and then work full-time in my business. Now, I'm working through a mind map that I have created for this talk. Resigning the role was a difficult decision because I'm giving up something that I loved, and then going ahead just doing full-time work as in my own practice. So as you said earlier on, you said the word threat, right? It's a threat, and the threat was around the income. I'm not sure if you will be able to replace that. So certainly fear was definitely really high up there. But I thought when I resigned, interestingly, I was quite inspired and like positive and certain that this is going to be a great opportunity. So I had really positive feelings during the final 4 weeks when I left the role, and I had a wonderful, wonderful farewell with cards, presents, and all that, as a wonderful farewell gift from Western Sydney University, the careers team. And so what happened after I left was, and not many people know this, so I'm actually recording and publicly sharing this. Um, the 4 to 8 weeks following from the last day of work there, I went into the neutral zone. And that neutral zone was uncertainty and very challenging. The first 4 weeks, I thought to myself, I can manage myself. I can journal. I have networks. I talk to Leonie Stanfield. I can get through this. But it was so difficult. It was one I felt sadness. I felt loneliness. I felt a range of emotion. So if just checking in, you're following on with you're following through the story. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. My goodness, a lot going on.
A lot going on. Yes. So I decided at 4 weeks, I'm thinking, what's going on? I really need to seek support. So I actually, a lot of courage. I contacted the EAP provider at Western Sydney University, and I spoke with a counsellor, so EAP Employee Assistance Program. And this is a wonderful program for any organisation. Large organisations normally have this program, and anyone that we support who are going through career transition, we encourage them to use this program. So if we encourage people to use this program, are we using the program ourselves?
Yeah.
So I took the courage to contact EAP and organise a few counselling sessions. And it was only through the counsellor that really helped me get through this neutral zone of uncertainty. And he said to me, I'll just use his first name, Michael, Leonie, you spent 7 years at that university on and off 1-2 days a week. But also I studied at that university for 7 years, bachelor and my master degree. So that was 14 years, Leonie, with a identity connection with the university that I was grieving, not just the role, but my colleagues, my connections. It's so much association with the university. And it really felt like it was a massive hole that just suddenly, just, in my life, in my heart. And so I was really shocked that I had this neutral zone was so powerful. I really didn't think, it's only 2 days a week, Thursday, Friday. You close one door, a new door opens, which happened, but I just didn't expect to go through such a transition. So it's a solid 8 weeks, I think it took for me to try and get through it all. So it's not just the mind processing it, it's also the body processing it. So the mind, the heart, the body processing the change. So it takes a long time. Now, I think I probably perhaps transition quickly than others. Some people can take years, right? Years to transition. So, in all that, I'm a true believer. Everything happens for a reason. So you close one door, a new door opens. And more importantly, last year, 2024, because of the experience I had with the university, it then gave me that direct raw experience of that career transition to help my clients, many clients last year, navigate through career transition. And, I was getting work where clients would tell me, I've had my life planned. I've just got, I've already planned my whole life and I didn't expect to lose this role. I have worked in this organization for 19 years. I thought I was going to retire here. So it gave me such solid grounding emotional experience to then help my clients last year go through what they went through. And you too, thank you. You helped me so much understand what was going on. But yeah, that was my personal story, Leonie. It was pretty full on.
Yes, my goodness. And I think the interesting thing about that was kind of the unexpectedness of it, that there was a sense in which you expected certain things, but other things kind of happened. It was a lot more involved than you kind of first anticipated. So, it's interesting. I bet it took a fair bit of courage to make that decision in the first place. But I love knowing you very well. I love the positivity you bring, and I love that you see the possibilities. So I know that kind of that set you up well. But again, I think, your experience, like most, is there are going to be things that we don't expect. We can't kind of anticipate everything that's going to happen through that process. And so in the process of that, we do need to reach out and look for appropriate support and professional support where we can, even when we kind of think, oh, it's not going to help or I don't need it. It's kind of really useful to take advantage of ongoing support. Yeah.
Yes, yes. You witnessed the whole transition actually.
Yeah. But I love that it's given you, as painful to some degree as going through that was, it's actually equipped you more in your business now, as you say, having that raw experience. And as you connect and empathize with clients on an even more deep level, having had that recently. I'm wondering, you commented on strong emotions, and knowing, your passion and expertise in kind of the mindfulness space. I'm wondering, how can mindfulness help us manage strong emotions?
Yes, this is I think I could speak about mindfulness all day, as you know, how much I love mindfulness practices. Um, Now, I use a technique that I learned from a yoga teacher when I was in Bali. I said, I'm feeling these strong emotions. How do I manage it? And I think I met her about 2017, and we were sitting at the beach in Bali, and she gave me the method. She said, first of all, you need to understand. So 4 stages. You need to first understand how you're feeling, understand the emotion. And second, you um, acknowledge how you're feeling. And third, you then accept how you feel. And then the fourth is then after you fully accept it, then you learn to let it go. And so was a beautiful technique that that yoga teacher on that yoga retreat shared. So I came back to Sydney, and then I started to apply it in my personal life, in with my coaching, with my clients, and definitely worked with some amazing clients who are in leadership roles, management roles, where their roles were made redundant, to help them coach using that method to coach people even on Zoom, Leonie, to understand what they're feeling, acknowledge how they're feeling, fully accepting how they feel, and then let it go. So I do have a handout that I've developed for this. So if you're interested, I'll provide my contact details. Just email me. I'll send you the handout. So that's what I use. But the other one that's really simple, so that's a mindfulness practice to manage those emotions. Because if you don't recognize it, if you don't understand what's happening, it will stay there. It's like you go, you know what, I'll deal with it later. I'll park it. I'll deal with it later, the anger, the frustration. And then one of my amazing clients that I have, he said, Leonie, I keep parking it, the anger, the frustration, I keep parking it. And my car park is full. I'm like, yeah, well, that's why you keep parking. It's full. And that's when you burn out. That's when you collapse. So that is why the power of mindfulness in managing emotions is really cool. But a simple technique, and I'll send a link to in the details of the podcast and video, etc. But it's a technique by that's Tara Brach, a psychologist and an author of a book called Radical Compassion. So I'm just going to read through this quickly. So the acronym is called RAIN, RAIN. Have you heard of it before, Leonie?
No, I haven't come across this one. I have heard of the book before, but so I'm keen to hear.
Yes, so it's called, so the book is, called Radical Compassion for the listeners. And so R, and you love this because I heard you use this word a lot, recognize. So R stands for recognize what is happening. A stands for allow the experience to be there just as it is. I stands for investigate, investigate with interest and care. As you said, be kind, be curious, be kind to yourself. And then, nurture. N stands for nurture with your self-compassion.
Okay.
So I'll just add the link to this information. But yeah, everyone, people who love acronyms, it's easy to use. So that's two of the practices. I'll just check if there's anything else that's missing. That's pretty much some of the mindfulness practices, I think.
Yeah. That's great because that's so practical for us to be able to actually welcome the emotions in a sense. I know there's a lot of research that would suggest that emotions are often there to kind of protect us at some level, but they often don't do that. So I think that idea of understanding, is really important, of acknowledging them, of then accepting them, and then certainly being able to, as you said, if you've done all of that, you've got a better chance of being able to let it go, or put it where it needs to be. Not just park it where it's convenient, but put it where it needs to be. Wonderful. Well, I'm imagining that you have then, from your experience yourself and with others, you've probably got an idea of how people can prepare themselves. So what would you say for people? How do you think they can better prepare themselves mentally for sudden changes in the workplace?
I have so many ideas for this one.
Good.
I'll try to keep it simple. A few years back, we attended a professional development event through the Career Development Association of Australia that we're part of, and there was a psychologist there. I can't remember her name, but kudos to her. She introduced a model called the PERMA model. So PERMAH. Again, I'll put a link to the resource there. So it stands for P for positive, so ways to build positive emotions. E for engagement, so ways to increase engagement in activities that you love. R for relationships, so R is how to build relationships. M for meaning, ways to build more meaning in your life, personally, professionally. A for achievement, so how to build ways to build achievements in your life. And finally, the H stands for health, so just general health, well-being, mental health, physical health, eating well, etc. So I thought the model was good, and this psychologist did say she uses this model in her practice as a psychologist to really work with the clients to then manage, obviously provide counseling, etc. But I think that going back to your question around how can people better prepare themselves, the psychologist is talking about self-care, and she certainly helped me reframe how important self-care is. It's not just about, taking care of, making sure that you're happy and you're energized and so forth, but it's about building your resilience. So when things go wrong, you're not running on empty. You still have capacity to handle what is ahead of you. But if you're running on empty and you're at 20%, you've got nothing left, and then then you lose your role or job at work, then if you're going to go into, negative, and you haven't got enough resources to get back. So if you want to really prepare yourself for any change to occur in life, if you work on your self-care practices to manage your well-being well, you've got your cup is full, you've got a lot of energy, and physical health is good. I like to refer to Simon Sinek. I learned from him. He said mental fitness as opposed to mental health. So you're making sure physical health, mental fitness is good. Then when things go wrong, you have capacity to help yourself, help other people, etc. So I thought the PERMA model is a really good way to check in with yourself. What do you need to do? Do you need to be positive? What can you do to build more meaning in your life? What can you do to feel more energized, engagement. So I think to make sure that you really take care of yourself. But another simple thing, for how much I love meditation and mindfulness practices, that's the game changer for me. If you meditate or practice mindfulness in your day, what you end up doing is you end up being able to be very present in the present moment, and you accept changes really easily. So I'll just end with a quote from Eckhart Tolle. He's an author of a book called The Power of Now, a spiritual teacher and author. He says, he refers to the mind, inner resistance is to say no to what is through mental judgment and emotional negativity. Acceptance of what is immediately frees you from mind identification and thus reconnects you with being. Resistance is the mind. So when you practice mindfulness or meditation practices, you become very accepting of the present moment, of the change, and you have that inner capacity to handle the strong emotions that come. You see it clearly. It's coming and you just know. Yes. Thanks, Leonie.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Is there anything else that you would add to listeners now as a response from hearing today?
Oh, that's a good question. I just remembered. As you know, I have integrated meditation and mindfulness with my career coaching and training programs. And I have developed some guided visualization meditations and just general meditations for just well-being. The visualization meditation for job interviews, it's been very well received. So both have received, I've got two, and they both have been played over 500 times for both. So I'll add that to the resource list. But if there's anything you'd like to add before we say goodbye.
No, but thank you for the opportunity. I think this is a really important topic to be talking about. So thank you for the chance to compare notes and share. And I trust that people will feel more empowered to kind of manage through a transition as they listen, and also that they might be kind to themselves in the process.
Yes, be kind to yourself. Thank you so much, Leonie, and thank you everyone who is listening, or dear listeners. I look forward to our next podcast together. Thank you so much, Leonie.
Thank you.